Hello everyone, this is Danish Khan from ET Telecom, and today we have Mr. Faisal Kausa, who is founder analyst of TechArc, and he's going to give a presentation today on essentials for smartphone brands in 2020. During the presentation, he will talk about the essential strategies around product, pricing, channel, and marketing that smartphone brands cannot ignore. And after the presentation, Faisal will take up questions. Over to you, Faisal.
Hi, thanks Danish for this introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar of ET Telecom. I completely understand how challenging it is right now to join and hear a webinar because right now we are all trying to wrap up our work before kind of signing off for Diwali and a lot of festivities around. But nevertheless, I'll try my level best to be kind of as engaging as possible during this session. Now, as already introduced, so I will be essentially talking about uh, how the journey of smartphones has been so far, essentially over these 3-4 years, and what have kind of brands done during this period around product pricing, marketing, as well as the channel strategy, and what probably worked out of it, what did not work out, and then finally we will try to kind of wrap up with a set of say strategies or we would say some forward looking statements which probably brands should focus around in 2020 to not only stay ahead of the curve but also make some meaningful and purposeful kind of increments to the entire ecosystem. So just kind of, as I said, what we will be kind of talking today. So we will kind of present before you the big picture, how the industry looks like right now, what has been the kind of evolutionary path of smartphones over past few years, uh, what really worked for the brand and what probably did not work out so effectively. And out of all this discussion, finally we will conclude on what should brands actually do in 2020. So they will, they should continue some of the good things which are out there, and probably there could be some add-ons. We will essentially focus on what could be those add-ons. Now, just having a view, a very very top level view of the industry as of now. So if we look, how the sales are panning out, so there is a sale of a new smartphone as well as a pre-owned smartphone. As regards new smartphone, the growth is kind of flattening, but still I would say a modest growth of say 9 to 10% is still kind of taking place in the market, and we see something similar in 2020 as well. However, the pre-owned smartphone device segment, wherein people are either buying a refurbished smartphone or a hands down kind of a smartphone, that is growing pretty fast. And if we look at the growth rates, while the new smartphone market is expected to grow in the range of 9 to 10% annually, the pre-owned smartphone is expected to grow almost double this, which is around in the range of say 15 to 22% over the next couple of years. Now, within the pre-owned smartphones, we have two major segments. One is the refurbished, and another is just the hands down kind of a thing. Right now, refurbished is almost kind of 1/3 of the total pre-owned, while the 2/3 come from uh, the hands down smartphones, which we essentially call a second hand kind of a smartphone. But as the trend suggests, probably sometime 2021, 22, we should be seeing refurbished becoming the the dominating kind of pie within the pre-owned devices. Now let's kind of go a bit deep and try to understand why this is happening, why we are seeing these kind of growth rates. So in case of new smartphone, there are two things happening. One is the entry level, the first smartphone, segment is not growing to the potential that it has. for various reasons. Now, there are of course some, macroeconomic issues, something like, the affordability in the segment, the use case in the segment, so even kind of, at times accessibility to these phones. So these do add up to kind of, the entry level smartphone not segment not growing to the expected kind of potential out there. And at the same time, since people are kind of moving up the ladder, they are buying new phones which are, in mid and premium segments, which means they are spending more on the new phones they buy. Obviously, when they spend more on the new phones, the hold period automatically gets extended, which is kind of, affecting the new smartphone sale. Now, regarding the pre-owned smartphone, there are obviously a couple of good things which are enabling it. One is, in the past couple of years, we saw some really, good quality phones coming up, which have a second-hand value as well as second-hand use. At the same time, essentially due to the online expansion, we are also seeing exchange programs going up. We are seeing refurbished kind of, ecosystem developing, which is right now thriving essentially through the online medium. So all these factors taken together are shaping up the story. Now, if we look at some of the major trends out there, so what's exactly happening in industry right now? We are seeing consolidation, so fewer players out there. We are seeing kind of omni-channel built up, wherein there is offline channel as well as online channel building up. So the traditional offline only, online only, offline heavy, online heavy, those kind of, postures are fading away. Third, as I said, medium and premium segments are the two segments where we are seeing good growth out there. And finally, the refurbished, piece. This is also kind of picking up, and these four we can say are some of the, major trends around the smartphone industry right now. Now, what does this all story mean? Obviously, it has some positivities and it also throws up some challenges. Now, coming on to the positive sides. First and foremost, due to consolidation, we are seeing committed long-term players in the game. Now, what does that mean? So when you have long-term committed players in the game, and which are, kind of, say, major players out there in the game, this means it's kind of, helping out. Just a second, sorry. So it is kind of helping up, you know, it is helping up to build the entire ecosystem out there. What does that mean? So when you have all this ecosystem being built up, and you have only long-term committed players, they obviously help in, shaping up, bigger things in the industry. So as a consequence, we are seeing investments in manufacturing, we are seeing R&D setups being kind of R&D setup coming up. We are also seeing, channel investment in channel. So what this consolidation is leading to, we are essentially kind of, building all the fundamental requirements of the smartphone industry in India, which not only is good for the consumers out here, but it will also shape up the industry for the exports market. Second is more choice for upgrades and replacements. So what is happening? As I said, the market growth is now in the upgrades and replacement market, which means a lot of players are moving towards the premium and upper segments of the market. As a result, a lot many customers are now getting a lot many options out there. So if we look at previously, say in one of the segments, we had dominance of say OnePlus out there. Now we are seeing many players getting into that segment, so which is good for consumers. Third is customer before channel. Now, what was happening, a couple of maybe years before, people were focusing more on online versus offline. So somewhere the brands were becoming secondary, the channel was becoming important. Now that is kind of going away. brands, what we expect, since this is becoming omni-channel, brands will start taking precedence. I have some examples and instances where I see people talking more about buying things from, say, platform A versus platform B, rather than talking about which smartphone they have bought. Finally, refurbished vital for new smartphone users. Now, as I said, the entry level smartphone is an issue right now. There is a lot of opportunity. We have 500 million plus feature phone and smart feature phone users out there in industry, in the market, and we need to eventually bring them onto the smartphone. Now, what has happened, we know over the past few years, the domestic brands are facing challenges for obvious reasons, and these domestic brands were primarily focusing on the entry level of the smartphones. Now this is not happening right now, so we believe that refurbished kind of uh, uh, ecosystem is the one which will help in the growth of new smartphones. Coming on to the challenges side. So there are some challenges obviously out there as of this posture. So one of the challenge which I, touched on the positive side. Now this is also a challenge because you don't have too many players out there. Essentially, from the new smartphone, piece, the feature phone to smartphone, upgrade is not happening at the full throttle. So that is an issue out there. Now, second, as we are seeing the kind of these offline versus online channel distinction kind of going away, it has started to go away. It is still there, but I believe the process has started. Now, once the process has started, it obviously results in a lot of conflicts. Now, this is obviously not healthy for the industry. This is a challenge right now we have. Third is the flanking, uh, strategy which has been used by many brands. So flanking confuses customers a lot. So there are various kind of dimensions of flanking. So one of the dimension of flanking is there is a brand level flanking, which means like a brand has a sub brand, has a series. So it all confuses the consumer essentially when there is no straight positioning. And then there is a model level flanking. So you have model A, model B. You don't find great differences between the two. So consumer and the price points are plus minus same. So consumer gets confused by the message, by the positioning that the brand is trying to convey. And this is one of the challenges. So this needs to be decluttered. And finally, since we are seeing the advent of pre-owned devices in the market, although the refurbished players are trying to build up an ecosystem and a process out there, but these processes are very proprietary right now. There is no standardization. So what probably platform A, they have a process of say making phones available on their platform. They go through certain checks. Those checks may or may not be necessarily be followed by another platform. Now, as a result, the people who are buying pre-owned devices and refurbished devices are not necessarily getting standardized kind and a quality controlled device. Uh, it has its own implications. So in certain markets, we have observed that, through the channel of refurbished, you're not actually getting refurbished phones, but you're getting the fake, smartphones of the similar brands. So that is a challenge out there. Now, we talked about, what the scenario looks like, what are its implications. Now let's move a bit on. Just a second. Yeah, sorry. So now let's move on. How the journey has been so far and what have been its implications. Now, if we look at, say, a scenario before 2016, phones were essentially used for, say, calling, and there was a bit of messaging over it. Of course, there was, the basic level of browsing out there. Now, along 2016, what we saw, the era of social networking started. So that came up as, I would say, the flavor of our smartphones in that year. Along that year, we also started witnessing a bit of online commerce, essentially through mobile platforms. So the online shopping kind of picked up through mobiles. Then 2017 focus moved towards more of changing the kind of the content type. So we were before 2017 we were predominantly textual based, on our smartphones. Then we moved on to the picture based kind of content, and capturing pictures and camera became very important, and it still continues to be. While this happened, and of course the internet, the wireless broadband internet kind of grew in the country, it also opened up the mobile driven economy. It started the kind of we saw some of the tenants being kind of built around that period. So what were those? So some of those included, like, we could now book services like cabs and other such things. We could also, we started doing some payments, banking and other such financial transactions over mobile. And when we kind of moved further towards 2018, the story changed towards a consumption of video-based content. Uh, while this was kind of picking up, it picked up. We also saw games coming in. Now games moved from a simple leisure game, arcade game, to more of a platform-based multiple player game, like PUBGs and others of the world. Now, in 2019, while all this was continuing, some of the players, we see that the seeds have been already sown, and we believe in 2020 it's going to be one more, one of the major flavors around which smartphones will be launched, and which will kind of define how what should be the features of a smartphone, is the video content creation. So a lot of phones were launched essentially in the second half of 2019, where the focus in terms of features, applications, hardware was more on how does it enable user-friendly, easy, on-the-go video-based content creation. Now, this has been overall, a journey of use cases over smartphone over the past few years, and as a result, so there is a kind of a cycle there. What happens is you have some feature sets. Because of those feature sets and other like enablers like growth of broadband, wireless broadband, a use case kind of emerges. Once the use case emerges, it pushes the brands, the smartphone makers, to improvise further in those specifications, and that keeps on kind of this innovation cycle on. So what have we kind of moved during, because of this kind of journey of use cases? We have right now moved from a GB a month to GB a day. In fact, more right now. Now, among the features, so camera, battery, memory, display, they have taken the precedence in smartphones, because these are some of the enablers from hardware standpoint, which have really facilitated a lot in kind of making these use cases happen, and added a lot in terms of making the experience better. And finally, software from both elements, the OS side as well as the app side, has and plays a critical role in adding that last kind of juice, which makes the complete experience. So it's not hardware alone, although over these years, I think in all the amplifications, in all the messages, hardware has been the central point talked about, but a lot contribution has come from software and apps as well. So that also needs to be recognized. Now, because of this journey, so what have brands done? If we look at, from product point of view, from say channel point of view, from advertising, marketing point of view, and from pricing point of view. Now coming to the product first. So of course, the first implication which became the bread and butter kind of a thing was, having more and more of 4G. So, a couple of years back, we started seeing almost every smartphone being sold into India a 4G smartphone. Now, from install base per point of view, we are right now around 73% of the total smartphones are 4G enabled, have at least one of the slot as a 4G slot. The second thing which kind of picked up was VoLTE. So all the operators kind of invested in supporting VoLTE. They invested in the core, IP solutions which enabled making VoLTE calls. So we saw VoLTE, dual VoLTE. Now these became kind of, I would say, the basic hygiene improvisations in the phone. But other than that, the journey, how it evolved, I think four areas around which most of the things which kind of were built are camera, memory, battery, and display. In camera, we had a couple of angles to look at. One is we moved from you know a double-digit megapixel to now a triple-digit megapixel. Although that's not the only optimization, and that only does not guarantee a better experience. So there is, for instance, night mode came in. Also, multiple lenses came in. So we don't have now a camera. We have a camera system now in our phones, wherein a camera, supports, different kind of, I would say, modes or scenes. Then on to the memory side, both in terms of ROM as well as RAM, we saw upgrades. So, RAMs have now moved to double digit in certain phones, wherein, now we have over 10 GB RAM and other, kind of formats are available. In terms of memory, there was a time when we used to say probably 64 GB is a lot, but now even I think 128, 256, and even now 512 GB looks like something which has a use case for all of us. So memory is another area where we saw a lot of improvisations, innovations, a focus that brands had. Third is of course the battery. So in terms of battery, we saw two things. One was the capacities going up. So while a couple of years, 2000 mAh was the order of the day, it has gone up almost, at least 50% up to 3000 and above. So that has become the order of the day. And alongside rapid charge, fast charge, dash charge, whatever technologies, proprietary technologies the brands have, that has enabled us to quickly charge our phones, and that too of these capacities which we are talking about. Obviously, all these had to support the use cases, how we are using the smartphones right now. And finally, on the display, so a lot of focus over the years has been on the display. So we have been trying to improve the nits so that we are able to kind of, view our phones even in the brightest of the lights. We have focused on improving resolution, so we have moved to 4K and beyond. We have moved to HDR plus kind of experience, and on the form factor side, we have tried to get I would say we are still kind of evolving to find an answer of a full screen display experience, which makes definitely our content consumption, essentially video content consumption over mobile phone, very, very enriching. So we had different kind of solutions coming from vendors. Some thought of putting the primary camera as a pop-up camera, a rising camera. Some tried with a water drop notch. Some tried with a in-hole camera. So there are different kind of flavors, which I would say brands are still experiencing. I think we have yet to understand from customer what customer is liking in terms of these options available. So these are four major areas which I think have been primarily focused from the product side to support this evolution. The second thing, of course, from the channel point of view has been, brands diluting their postures of being online only or offline only. So brands are now trying to become an omni-channel, brand, which is a good thing because you are now really recognizing customer first kind of, market sentiment, where a brand is now kind of trying to tell the market that for us the customer is important, not the channel alone, and we want to be on all the channels that consumers want us to be on. So it's not that we want to kind of create a digital divide, a new kind of digital divide, wherein the latest and the best is probably available only on over the online platform, while the offline segment is kind of void of the latest innovations. Coming on to the marketing advertising side, now this is an area where I feel a lot of smartness has not been exhibited by the brands. So if we look at all the kind of promotional activities, promotional endeavors, so the focus has been more on engaging the youth, engaging millennials, engaging Gen Z. That has been the focus around. And every activity which has been the main focus, or where a lot of spending has gone into, has been more to do with engaging youth. So sports events, that gives a good opportunity for brands to kind of associate themselves with the youth. So we saw a lot of brands investing in sports heavily this year. Celebrity and influencer endorsements, that we saw on the rise, not just say brand ambassadors, but a lot of brand influencer engagements came to forth, even like using micro influencers. So somebody is kind of strong on a particular social media platform, so we saw those kind of engagements from brands coming up. And there is a bit of, although very low level, PR, data driven PR, also kind of seen in this industry, wherein the standings of the brand based on the research reports and other such things is used by brands to kind of promote themselves among the stakeholders. Now, finally, coming on the pricing. Now, pricing has been, I would say, on two factors. One is, what am I offering in terms of specifications, and what is my competition pricing the same specification around. So unfortunately, personally, I believe this is not the right strategy of pricing, but that is where we are right now. This is how the industry prices phones. We don't see any kind of great innovation or great strategy being put around pricing right now. Now, this is the story so far. So what do really brands do to kind of change this in 2020, and what probably brands should keep continuing? So if I come to what they should keep continuing, I think this innovation cycle is definitely something which is helping brands, which is adding value to consumers, but it cannot be only around, say, hardware, because there's a limit to hardware innovation, and we will kind of fall prey to our own cycle, which we have kind of set up. So every time, then users will expect that there has to be an increment in the measurement of a particular feature. Only that will be kind of seen as an innovation or something new coming from the brand. So if we look at, again, what could be those potential areas which brands could think of. So talking about the product to begin with, so there could be a potential, way of looking at market from regional perspectives. Now, if we look, India is a very, very diverse market, but at the same time, even those diversities are very, very, I would say, large opportunities available. And at the same time, if we see the product life cycle and the total volume of a particular model is squeezing over the years. So what probably used to be, the volumes which used to sell, say 3 years, 4 years back of a particular model, they are squeezing. Right now you don't sell those many models of the same, those many units of the same model, because you are every time kind of refreshing your inventory with the new models. So the point I'm trying to make is, when we have a sustainable model right now, where probably we are able to support, making new innovations every now and then, or coming up with new models every now and then, why can't we probably think of, creating these models specific to certain regions? Because we know content is the future of, digital world, and if we have to really play that game well, this content has to be aligned regionally. That will bring a lot of value to for users, and it can really make some good uh, results for brands who may resort. But there is a rider around here. When we say regional smartphones or region specific smartphones, these cannot be just like, we are kind of translating and providing some language options, and we say, okay, now I am ready with, for instance, a Bengali smartphone, or smartphone for Bengal market, or smartphone for Telugu market, and so on. There has to be something more, and for that we need to really understand customers in those regions, in those specific areas. And these innovations, these answers will be coming from both hardware as well as software point of view. So we know, the kind of diversity in, for instance, climate and weather we have. So we have, some areas like, for instance, Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir, where we have sub-zero temperatures in winters, and we have areas where we almost touch now, close to 47, 48 degrees during summer, peak summer. Now, this is a diverse range, of area. Obviously, there can be some scope wherein we try to align our hardware as per these requirements, and that can be talked with some sort of software, improvisation specific to those regions. So that's one probably area which could be looked at, and is kind of the first essential from my side for brands in 2020. Second topic I want to really raise around is security. While there is something good that Google has, because most of the phones, predominant of the phones are Android based, so I would talk about Google here. While Google has done pretty much lot to improve the security, they have now kind of mandated it for brands to support security upgrades for at least 3 years. Most of the brands do respect upgrading their smartphones every month. And even now, I think now the competition is not whether a brand is releasing the upgrade. Now the game is on who is releasing fast, because it makes a lot more sense. Because what happens once you are out with the info that what you have improved, it becomes a meat for those who are looking to find out the loopholes, because now they have the information available what is lacking in the previous versions, and they can potentially exploit it. So that's one side of the story. The second side is our stakes with respect to smartphones are increasing. We have all our personal data, we have our contacts, we have our banking transactions, we have credit card information, we have a lot of information now on our smartphones. And this information is not of only, say, an evolved and a learned kind of a user, but it is also of people who may not be knowing the digital world very well. And these people are also on digital, say, social platforms. So there are a lot of potential vulnerabilities which can be exploited. Second thing which I wanted to talk about here is, there is a lot of still a gray area within apps. So the general notion is that whatever comes on, say, Google Play Store is clean and good to be used, to be consumed, which is not the case. There have been instances, there are reports from various independent, security experts of the app vulnerabilities, of say add-ons which are unnecessarily burnt along with the SDK, and when you try to say decompile the app or kind of unfold the app, you're not able to understand why this particular, say, code or a set of instructions in the particular app, because it does not, it nowhere really correlates with the primary purpose of the app. So definitely in those cases, one can assume that this app is doing something beyond what it is primarily supposed to do. Now, there have been cases in the past, and this is something, I think we should be very much kind of aware of, and brands should really look into this. So this is second thing, I think, from product point of view, which needs to be strengthened. And third, as I said, innovation is good. It's lifeline of technology. Unless you innovate, you are not in the game. But it cannot be just under the notion of offering more and making that, look as is optimal for the consumers. So there has to be a balance which we need to strike now. What is actually optimal for the users, and ensure that they get that optimal is delivered, and they get the best experiences out of it. This is, I would say, one of these are three main things which come to my mind are really essentials from product point of view for smartphone industry in 2020. From the channel or place point of view, I think we need to sort out the channel conflict. Recently, during the festive period, we saw a lot of news, lot of conflict, lot of allegations and counter allegations between the two sets of channel. Now, we don't want this division. It's not healthy for anyone. So there has to be a resolution, and I think brands are common to both the channels. So brands probably need to take that lead and try to find out a robust, viable solution how channels can be taken together. Now there have been some ways which have been tried, experimented. For instance, somebody keeps a dedicated series or a few models for one channel, but we have seen it doesn't effectively help, because ultimately there is some cross channel selling which takes place. So there have been instances, and everybody is kind of in the industry is aware of those instances. Finally, on the promotion, so while we have to really keep our consumers excited about the brand, we have to keep them charged about the brand, and advertising and marketing definitely plays a role there. There is also a lot of scope for kind of setting that thought leadership mode for promoting your products. Why I'm saying so? Because a lot of education needs to be kind of imparted in the smartphone industry, is essentially for users to make better calls. Now we all probably talk AI, but as a consumer, do we exactly know what AI is? And can a consumer differentiate what is AI and what is not AI? Why do I need AI? Now, that kind of learning can only be enabled through thought leadership series, wherein the focus is not on, say, earning or gaining some marketing points, but the focus is more on enabling the ecosystem, which will include users, which will include channel, which will include everybody else. So the smartphone selling is obviously becoming very technical. Now, are we focusing enough on, say, enabling, empowering the channel players in the offline and teaching them, educating them, increasing their awareness about the new technologies which are, coming through smartphone? I think that's very important to be done out there. Finally, since kind of we feel there is some scope of going regional, there should be now some hyper local or regional kind of promotions which should take place. It cannot be a same message all through the country. that may not be effective. We have to really look at what is very region specific, what is very hyper local, which can be leveraged to promote our products. And finally, as a consequence of, regarding pricing, as a consequence of flanking, I think we have to, declutter this space. And once we declutter this space, brands align themselves with to the segments they want to be present in. And when I say brands need to kind of align to the segments, I'm not, saying they should be only in one or a few segments. It's up to the brand. If brand has all the kind of requisites resources that it can play the game in entire spectrum of segments, it has to do that. It will do that, but there has to be a complete demarcation of where and where it is not. So this is essentially what I feel are the essentials for these kind of industries out there, and which the brand should kind of follow. With this, I'm done with my set of presentation, and I think we are now open for question answers. So over to you, Danish.
Okay, thanks, Faisal. Thanks for this presentation. We have some questions from our viewers. So one question is around handset bundling. So do you expect that telcos and handset players may look at deep bundling by next year? For instance, yesterday there was a release on Vodafone Idea and Credit Made partnering to make phones more affordable. But can we expect players like Vodafone Idea, Airtel to look at bundling next year, not just to drive their data consumption, but to create more or maybe bring more 4G customers on their network? Do you expect this to happen next year?
So, it's not something new. It's been happening. We have seen this, being experimented several times in the Indian market as well. I personally don't feel it's going to be a successful strategy. Two weak partners cannot come together to kind of make a proposition. So it has to be a strong ecosystem which can make it happen. And unfortunately, for whatever reasons, the operator orientation in India is not in that direction that we expect, consumers to kind of pick up it from, through an operator channel.
Okay. So the next question is around these jargons like AI and ML, because in the past people have talked about it, then they converted the conversation around these technologies being used for camera usage. Can we expect more prominent use case of these technologies in handsets in coming years? Is it going to be a possibility and a selling point as well?
So yes, of course, a lot can be done, leveraging these technologies, because ultimately we have a lot of data that is being generated by, a smartphone about a user, about, what exactly user does all through the clock is available with a smartphone. Now that data can be very well used, and I would say leveraged by technologies like AI, ML, which can potentially bring in new services, new use cases, and new applications for consumers like you and me. So some of the examples could be like making them more intelligent, and going beyond, say, camera. So for instance, battery management has already picked up. A lot of AI has already kind of started intervening in battery management. I believe there are more such possibilities. It could be with respect to e-commerce. It could be even with respect to how we are managing our data. So yes, there are possibilities out there.
Okay. The next question is around the services part of the business of handset players. A lot of players, prominently Chinese ones like Xiaomi, have already started their services business. They are selling services through applications. do you expect more handset players to come up with their service offerings, deeper partnership with players that may be offering services through their application, deep partnership? So can we expect that to happen, like services taking a center stage?
So, as I said, so there is a point up to which, hardware gives you money. Okay. If we look at, say, for instance, Apple history, iPhone history specifically. Now, I think there's still no hardware which comes closer to iPhone, in terms of whatever quality and all that. But if you look at, for the past 10 years, probably, since Apple has been there, iPhone has been there in the game, the primary focus has been hardware. But now we have seen in the recent announcements, they are also kind of moving to services. So yes, that is the game going forward. And as I was also saying, that we have now this, fat pipe of data available. We have very, very capable devices available. What are we going to do on them? It's nothing but services. So that is the future. And when brands are trying to kind of, evolve beyond smartphones, getting into the smart home kind of a segment, so services play a critical role. And what I was referring to, this regional smartphone kind of an idea, I think it very, very kind of syncs with that as well.
The next question is sent by Mr. Satish. He talks about, or he's asking the question about the Indian handset players, the domestic ones. So, do you see any possibility of them making a comeback in the open market, like obviously they play them playing role like they used to play 2 or 3 years back?
So there is an interesting opportunity, like, which I was also talking about, the entry level smartphone or the first level of smartphone. Now that is something, not being looked at by the other players or the other dominant players right now very aggressively. But for that, these brands have to collaborate. They have to collaborate a lot. At least they have to collaborate on R&D. They have to collaborate on maybe manufacturing. So essentially, the back end has to be collaborated. They have to work it out together, and then they can kind of sell it, to this segment. That's a huge opportunity out there, provided I believe they collaborate and, evolve technologically very, very, fast.
Okay, so next year, the next question is by Tarun Kohli. He wants to understand about the decisive features for customers when they seek to buy or upgrade their phone. So next year, for instance, if a consumer is planning to buy a new phone, what is going to be the decisive feature for that customer?
Okay, so we had done some research in the past, and we tried to bucket these features into two. One is kind of essentials, and others is in the value enhancers. Now, what we believe right now, those value enhancers are now moving to essentials. So things like, fast charging, it's really, really becoming very important for, price points, across segments. Like every user understands the significance of, having a fast charging kind of a smartphone. Then definitely more battery capacity, because you need to support almost 24/7 online kind of user. That is second. Third is you need to definitely improve, get a better experience in camera, get a better experience in the consumption of data. So what I want to say is probably what is available in niche right now and is seen as a value added kind of a feature, those features are going to become mainstream in 2020, and that's what will kind of enable those decisions for users.
And second question, the next question is on security. So in the past, there was a buzz on security. Government obviously was pushing about pushing handset makers to like bring the data back to the country. After that, a lot of companies shifted their servers to Indian shores. So, what could be done beyond the shifting servers to India when it comes to securing consumer data, which is generating from the handset?
So, my take on this localization, data localization is perhaps it's not an effective way. It's not an effective strategy because, you cannot compartmentalize an app. An app is spread globally. Like it's built over modules which are spread globally. So even if the consumer data is stored locally, the app will still talk to so many servers around the globe. So that's one point there. Coming on to what additionally, I think we have to have a mechanism wherein we are doing sometimes some kind of sanitization of the apps. So there needs to be a sanity check of apps. Uh, so government needs to perhaps invest in a third party setup which rigorously keeps on checking apps. So we have something say on the equivalent of CERT, probably within their domain or whatever the government feels best. We need to have a strong capability of checking apps. Now I know you can't check all the apps, so we have I think close to 3 million apps on the Play Store, but at least we could take a call on keeping evaluating the most commonly used apps. That's something I think should be done.
Thanks, Fazal. I think we have addressed most of the questions. On that note, let's conclude this session. And thank you very much for this insightful session and the presentation. For the viewers, I need to give an update that we are going to soon come up with a new webinar series which will revolve around the Internet of Things. So things are being planned, and we are going to soon inform our viewers about the schedule and the IoT series. Thank you very much, and thank you, Fazal, once again.
Thanks, Danish. Thanks, everyone. Everyone, happy Diwali.